My guess is there are like a decent amount of people out there who really love Waterworld.
Yeah.
Because they were probably about our age, probably still are about our age. That's how ages work. But, people that were, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you saw Waterworld, and you're at that age and you're like, wow, holy shit, this movie is crazy, because it is crazy. I think the main reason I wanted to talk about Waterworld, there's a lot of reasons. There's several main reasons. The main reason is because I think what kind of little I remember about Waterworld, I thought it would be a worthwhile conversation piece because it was such a spectacular failure.
Yes.
Like in different ways, in different,
I have that tattooed on my lower back.
Spectacular failure.
Spectacular failure.
It's probably spelled wrong. Keith, you know where I like to start.
I do.
Had you ever seen Waterworld before?
No, of course not. This is definitely not my kind of movie. Anyone who knows me, which you clearly don't. It's not my kind of movie.
I'm still surprised.
Of all the movies I haven't seen?
Yeah, because like movies like this, like I understand you haven't seen like great films. You know what I mean? Like you're not that kind of person.
Yeah.
But like a movie that was just kind of like dumb fun in the mid-90s when you were like a pubescent boy. Like, what are you watching at slumber parties when you go to your friends' houses?
Don't talk about my pubescent lifestyle as a young boy, okay?
Like, what, you only watch Blazing Saddles? Like,
yeah, because I love racism.
Hey, where are the white women at?
No, yes, I only watched comedies growing up. I really only watched comedies.
But like when you go to a buddy's house, you're 12.
Yep.
They're just like, sure, put on Dumb and Dumber again for Keith. They're never like, put on Waterworld, put on Point Break.
That's
like,
why no one invited me places.
You're like, what's a slumber party?
Yeah, what happens at a slumber party? Do you slumber?
Okay.
No, we watched, honestly, the movies that I watched growing up were this is not what the show is about. What are we doing?
Honestly, we watched a lot of porn.
I mean, there was some of that, I'm not going to lie. You suggested Waterworld. Let me hear your thoughts first before I get into my thoughts.
I watched it once or twice, probably more than that, several times, with a shout out to my old friend Josh Hamilton, who I've talked about a lot on this show. We watched a lot of films together. I think he really liked Waterworld, and it was one he always wanted to put on, and I was a little more lukewarm, like, I've seen it, so I was excited to revisit it because I haven't watched it in 25 years.
So you liked it? Is that the consensus from coming from you?
As a child?
Both. I'm curious, like, how's your opinion changed? I would assume if you liked it as a kid, you like it now.
No, how is that remotely true?
What?
That's only true of Beethoven.
Everything.
I don't want to scratch his head. Back off.
But he wants you to.
Well, honey, sometimes we don't get what we want. That's not the way the world works.
Beethoven rules.
Everything you like as a kid, you usually like as an adult. Like, how many things have you liked as a kid that you'd be like, no, that is garbage?
But I was a smart child. I had great taste.
No, but if you like it when you're young, you like it when you're older. Like,
But I just said, I didn't love it. That's the thing. I was kind of lukewarm on it.
Okay.
And I feel that way now, but I think this film is fascinating because, like, what the fuck? Like, it's the most bonkers film of all time. And there's a lot to love. And
I don't know the parts to love.
Oh, there's a lot to love. And there is so much to...
So real quick, I just want to mention this. So you talk about you think there are two camps on this film. Do you think it's pretty evenly divided?
I think it's pretty polarizing.
Definitely polarizing.
There can't be a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, all right.
So I have a family member, my brother-in-law, one of my two brother-in-laws, said to me before we even talked about doing this film, he goes, you know what my favorite film is? Because he knows I'm a film guy. He says, my favorite film is Waterworld. You think my film, Dumb and Dumber, is the worst film ever. My brother-in-law, Dan. I'll give Dan a shout out. Dan, you're insulting Dan. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm about to insult Dan, but that's just God's honest, his opinion. He's in the Coast Guard. He loves the water. He catches tuna the size of me. Like he's a seaman. He's a seaman.
Yeah.
That's what they get up for?
We're a man of the sea. Me and Dan.
You're both people of the sea.
Me and Dan. I get you, Dan.
And I truly love Dan very, very much. He is a great person, a great family member, a great brother-in-law.
Just got shitty taste.
But once I heard this was his favorite movie, and then I saw the movie, I thought about divorcing my wife just to get out of the family.
Stop talking. Cut him off.
I haven't talked to him in the last 6 months. No, I think this movie is garbage. Like, I personally think this movie just sucks. So I don't know if you want me to start just saying like what I truly dislike about this, but like I thought it was really unenjoyable.
See, that's probably where I would disagree, because I do think this movie sucks. But I think it's kind of enjoyable once every 20 years.
So you enjoy the wreckage of this, like
kind of
the
like
nonsense
it's such
of this
a
film.
spectacle, and then there is like really the only positive. I said there's a lot of positives. There's really only one positive, but it's an amazing positive that doesn't exist anymore, and that is like my bread and butter, the practicality.
Yeah, okay.
Like they built an entire world on the sea. That entire set that he goes to is a real place.
And this may be the film that is the reason films don't do this anymore.
Yes.
Because of how, it should be mentioned, how much money this film lost and how difficult production became.
Well, I think in the long run it ended up being financially viable after
after 30 years.
Well, yeah, after a while, but even like in international returns and stuff. Like when it came out, it was originally $100 million budget, ballooned up to 175. It was tales of horror and awfulness from the set. Yep. Beef between Costner and the director, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the end of the day, it made like 200 and something million. So yeah, it's not.
But how long did it take to make 200 million?
I don't think it took that long. I think like once you combined the U.S. domestic returns with the international returns, and then you start to see some cash flow in from other,
like DVDs and VHS,
like
merch. I have my water. We all have our Waterworld t-shirts.
It's like video games, all that shit. Like it started to it made its money. So it's not. It became such a punchline.
38, 39, 40 quarters. This better be good.
Game over. Please deposit 40 quarters.
What a rip!
I remember that. Like,
that's the only thing
from
I
the
knew
trades.
of it. That's the only thing I knew of the film really going in before, because it's just again not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's the tremendous flop. That's how I described it to my wife when I forced her to watch it.
Yeah.
She ignored it.
Well, it was the most expensive movie ever made
at the time.
And it did not do nearly as well as you would want the most expensive film ever to do.
Yeah.
So yes, it
was and only made more expensive throughout
Yes.
the process. So that's why they don't do that anymore. This is like probably
this is
exhibit A as to why we don't have those films.
But I mean that we should all weep a little bit for that, because I'd say from the point until it's revealed that he has gills. I would say that's the moment, because I had totally forgotten about that too. But until the whole beginning of like seeing his boat in operation, and as he arrives at this outpost and goes into the place, like all of that stuff is like fine and visually really interesting. And I think the structure and the mechanisms of the boat are like ingenious. Like somebody built, as I kept saying to Monique, I kept saying like someone built this. Look at this boat. They built this. They designed this. There's pulleys and ropes and all these little devices. And I think that's amazing. And then it goes off the rails. And but that's another.
So I guess there's things I can't get over. I always start with sort of story and the flow of the film and what happens, and can I inhabit this world? Can I sort of buy these characters? Like that's if a movie can't get me to a certain level where I'm like, I understand where we are in this universe and I care about these characters to some extent. If I can't get past that point, like to a point, I should say, then like the rest of there might be other good things. I just can't get on board with them. So when you bring it up, I go, you're probably right. There are some impressive things with the practical nature of the set design.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for nothing.
I'll concede that point. So for those people who worked on this film, good job.
But that is about where it
ends
in terms of positivity. Like there's a lot of holy shit moments for me. Like I was like this throughout, like looking at my wife, like what the fuck?
What?
Can you believe this? Like it starts with the gills. That's the first one. Like,
I couldn't believe he's a mutant.
Yeah, like
what?
I totally forgot.
Why? And they don't do anything with that.
No,
it's the fact that he's a mutant only means it only is for the one reference later, essentially the one payoff later of what he like takes her down to where it shows like how he's really getting the dirt or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
Like find a different way to do. Like I guess it does play a part. It plays an important part. I would assume their argument is that's the whole point. He's lying about this dry land, and like that's a big turning point. But it just feels like, should there be another race of people? It just feels so unexplored. If we're gonna introduce like, that's a more interesting concept, is like these new people that are emerging and their abilities, their talents, what they can do. How long can they hold their breath for? Like, they don't want to live on land anymore. Maybe they're fighting to keep things. Like, they don't want, like, that's a more interesting concept that it goes nowhere and does nothing other for that one. Like, I feel like they thought they were being like, this is going to be mind-blowing. We're going to set this up, and they'd be like, no, it's deep. He goes under the sea. It's this majestic world. And I just don't think that really gets paid off that well, and there's a much bigger story that could have been told.
I thought that part was cool. That's an aside, as he goes down and shows her the city. Like, I forgot that. I thought that was cool. But you
agree with me.
You're bringing up. Well, yes, I agree that the mutation thing is totally unexplored, and it's just one of a million things that happens where you're just like, what? And I think that's kind of my main problem. There's a lot of main problems, but like, it's about 30 different movies. And I think that's like, then you go back and you read about the different, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. And you're like, yes. Like,
that makes sense now.
There's a lot of, all the actors are acting in different films. The storylines are all 30 different ways. All of that stuff. You can tell that it feels like a lot of people worked on adapting this idea, and they all disagreed, and then the director quit, and then the star edited it together by himself.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
That's what it feels like.
And that's what happened. So like, it checks out because that's the hardest thing to get past.
So my question, as we've asked many times on this show, and as I watch this movie, I ask, in 95, 93, 95? 95. I want to say it came out in 95.
That sounds right.
In 95, it's a different time, so this answer may be different then than it is now. But who is this movie for? This movie feels like many different movies, I think, from a tonal space as well.
Oh yeah.
Like, it
blows my mind.
There's a lot of violence and a little bit of, not too much like gore, but like there's like some adult there. I mean, the way that Kevin Costner treats women is not great, which I do want to talk about.
Yeah, I got a lot about Costner's.
That's a separate
character.
issue. That's a separate thing that is worth discussing. But for this point, like, there's some intensity to this. Well, there's some intensity. There's nudity in it, but then also there are like super cheesy, like almost kid-like humor.
Yeah.
In it, and then I go.
Dennis Hopper is in Batman and Robin. Like,
yes.
He is a Batman villain.
He is yes.
It does look like shit.
When he's got
Kevin
the eye and it
Costner
rolls
is
on the ground, and it's just like that. This is like for kids.
Yeah.
But there's also, we're selling women to as property.
Yeah, and we're really gonna live in that scene for a long time. That's really emotional and gross and like uncomfortable.
And like these two things can't exist in the same film. And then there's like a middle ground that it's not just that bipolar.
Yeah.
There's a whole range within that of like, oh, this is young adult. Oh, this is for kids. Oh, this is for fucking grown-ups. Like, this is.
And then there's a sequence that's clearly for pedophiles. You talk about holy shit moments. I was literally like, how long is this gonna go? How long are these adoring shots of him with this little girl gonna go? Who was always wearing this little skimpy thing. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird.
But they didn't dance around like the one guy wanted to buy
take the girl.
To take, he was like, I want the little one. So they weren't shy about it. Yeah. They weren't shy. Like, they knew. Like, you know.
Yeah, but then you go back to Dennis Hopper cruising in a lowrider around.
Yeah, he's a fucking cartoon character
with like the fucking whatever that song is. It's like
So I just don't. And then there's also no sense of realism at certain point. Like, then it gets really cartoonish, like towards the end.
Yeah, he turns into like Rambo.
Yeah, which is, yes. Where in the beginning it seems a lot more like when he's stuck in the cage, that seems like a more grounded fight.
Yeah.
To the end where he skydives, bungee jumps
he's
off
the Terminator.
thing, and then he
like,
becomes a superhero at the end. Like, it is everywhere tonally all at once.
Yeah.
And I just don't know when they're making this film, when a studio's making this film, like this is the audience we're going for. This is the market that we think the biggest budget film. And for those people who online who criticize us for asking this question, like, who cares who it's for? Like, every studio gives a shit who this movie is for, because that's how they're getting their money back.
Yeah.
That's who's gonna, like, this audience, this group of people is gonna pay us. And the movie that costs the most money ever at one time gives a shit about who's going to give them money to see this film.
Well, that's probably why it feels like it's for everybody, because it's like trying to be for everybody.
For
It's like,
everybody?
we got to make money.
You think at that time they were that focused on it?
Yeah. Like, we got to
Maybe.
do something that's going to appeal to kids. It's going to appeal to adults. It's like we got Kevin Costner, this great leading man up to that point. He's a huge star. It's a huge futuristic adventure. There's going to be some funny stuff. There's going to be, like, maybe that's what someone thought.
And then they look at, I assume it's because I'm looking at it and I've never seen Mad Max, but it's Mad Max on the sea. That's what it is. So that was a success.
Yeah.
Mad Max has been a success. So I assume they look at that film as a comp.
Yeah.
And they say, let's do that, but on water.
Yeah, like the first writers of this were openly like, we're just trying to do Mad Max on the water.
On the water.
Which is a great idea. That's another small piece of credit I'll give. Like, the very general idea of this, I think, is great.
It could be interesting.
Like a whole world in the future where the ice caps have melted. I love the beginning. The trailer guy voice
that
and the
guy.
Universal just pumps in on
Yeah.
the logo. Like, that's cool. And you just watch them melt. Like, I thought that was really, really slick. But yeah, it's
Then you could turn the movie off.
yeah. And then you just go into him drinking his pee. So that's
What a way to, what a way to start this movie.
Yeah. And I think I think I remember being 11 years old and reading a review that's like, there's no more apt metaphor for Waterworld than Kevin Costner starting the film by drinking his own urine and like loving the taste of his own urine. Because he's really going for it. And that's, I think, so that segues nicely into,
Every time!
into,
Fine, I'll have a chocolate.
perfect. I'll have some
Get in it.
cookies.
We have snacks here, guys. Come, join us.
We have budgets.
Big budgets.
The segues naturally into like why it's interesting to think about why this film was such a failure immediately and didn't resonate with audiences. And I think it has a lot to do with it's not really for anyone because it tries to be for everyone, sort of. But I think that like the check marks that we've kind of talked about here is you start this film with him drinking his own piss, which is not the end, it's not an insurmountable hurdle, but it's kind of gross. And then he's really like milking it to be gross. So you're like, oh, okay. And then I think the main problem why this movie wouldn't resonate is that there is a lot of that like, kind of grossness. But it's like we talked about, Kevin Costner's character. That's not like a protagonist that you can really hitch your wagon to. And
what you want to get? We'll talk about it?
Yes, the mariner, the seaman, or Mr. Nimbus.
Shall we, Richard?
Okay, but how did
Jesus
he...
Christ, Jerry, he's Mr. Nimbus. He controls the police.
Yeah, so I can't imagine general audiences going to this film and being like, I like Kevin Costner. Like,
Going in.
Yeah, I love this guy. And then you're like, oh, like he's going to be kind of this swashbuckling Han Solo-esque scoundrel, which is probably
Jack Sparrow.
what he should have been.
He should have been Jack Sparrow,
Yes.
right? The first Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, slightly more sober Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
And
Equally as creepy.
And he just sucks.
He sucks.
He's joyless, and he becomes very violent, and he throws the kid overboard.
He's a
and
monster.
He beats the woman with an oar.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if those are played for like almost laughs. Like, is that supposed to be like? Are we supposed to be like hits her with the oar and it's like, oh, whoa,
and
like
we laugh?
How are we supposed to respond to that? Because I mean, I don't even think it's just through the lens of today. I bet you in 1995 people watch this and were like, the fuck is this guy? Like, this guy is not. How am I supposed to root for him? And then it culminates, I think, even worse, where he's about to sell Jeanne Tripplehorn to the fucking pervert.
That's where I want to turn the movie off. I'm not kidding. I suffered through the rest of that movie. At the moment when they're like talking about selling the woman and this little girl to this creep who gets on their boat and he's like considering it for.
Well, he does it.
Well, he does it, but then he like saves the day or whatever. But yes, he's like they're talking about it for what feels like forever for paper. And he's like negotiating. It's like a negotiation process. Like I got this paper.
Yeah.
It's so great. which is another problem within the story. Which quick diatribe, like who gives a fuck about paper? Like what has value in this world? Like it's another reason why. If you're gonna start trafficking women, it better be for a big fucking deal, like right? For me to like get on board with that somehow as an audience
quite
member.
explain why.
Like why is dirt so valuable? Why is paper fucking valuable? Why is all these trinkets from corners of the earth like what does that mean? What does that get you? Why do people? I digress. Back to Kevin Costner. I asked myself this question when I wanted to turn the movie off: is this character the least enjoyable protagonist ever in cinema? Like, I couldn't think of a worse protagonist to have.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to win. I didn't want him to succeed.
Yeah.
Even when he makes the turn,
which is unmotivated completely.
Unmotivated and like meaningless, like just heartless to it. He just like, it's time to do it, so we're doing it. Like
now I'm swimming with this child.
Like.
We're best friends. Yesterday,
Now she's my friend.
Yeah.
Who? I can't name a character that I wanted to root for less than I'm supposed to root for the most.
Yeah.
I can't name a character.
And I agree totally. And I think it's so strange because it's almost as if the film goes out of its way to keep putting him in positions for him to be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Like so, it's really trying to sell you. Which I guess like the only logic could be like, oh, it's really gonna pay off his turn. But then like we just said, the turn just happens. It just one morning she wakes up and he's slow-mo swimming in the sun with the little girl.
And they're friends now.
And they're best friends. So yeah, I think that must summarize why this film struggled to find like a core audience. Because
your protagonist is the villain. Because your
protagonist is the worst person in the world.
I kept thinking over and over again, every scene that they like come back to the boat because they leave the boat for a little bit once they escape on the island. Like every scene that they come back, like I get it. He's gonna be gruff and he's gonna be I'm a loner. Like that's his MO.
Better off on my own.
Yeah, I get the trope that we're doing here. But then I just keep waiting for him to like begrudgingly be nice and for him to show like I have a soft side. But just a rough exterior. Yeah. Like I kept waiting, and it just kept getting worse. Like every scene got worse. And then I looked at it, and I was like, oh, we're like an hour and 15 minutes into this movie, and he still sucks.
Yeah.
Like no redeemable. It's not even like a hint of redeemable quality.
He doesn't do or say anything funny or charming or anything. He's just mean.
He's a monster.
And abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this movie sucks. Like this movie, like I just don't understand. If you like this movie, I don't understand. I guess for Dan, I'm sorry, but you just like the water part. Like you just like the actual water, like boats. Boats are cool, and boat fights are cool.
I have to think people, I mean, it's like anything. You see at the right time in your life. So you see this movie when you're 11, and you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. Because you're just like, stuff is happening, and this is really interesting.
Senses overload.
Yeah, and even some of the serious stuff. You're not getting all of it, but you're getting enough that it feels really adult. So then that like resonates in you. Like there's movies like that for me that I know that like I could watch now and be like, oh Jesus, like how could I watch that and be like okay with it as a 13-year-old? But Porky's, Jesus Christ.
We call the police, and we have them send over one of their sketch artists. And this ball breaker can give a description.
I kind of want to do Porky's.
I don't know if we should.
I mean, I've made the joke, like, if you just watch Porky's now, you're on a list.
Yeah, somewhere. The government knows.
Yeah,
like, they're tracking you. Your local government is, all right.
Yeah, but there is in different ways, sure. But, you know, like, you watch Porky's, when I watched Porky's all the time when I was 14, and I was like, this is hilarious, and I wasn't going to go and, like, act like those characters, but I didn't also understand all of the awfulness that I was looking at.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that's probably the way with movies like this, where you're just like, oh yeah, man, that movie's cool. It's like, there's like weird stuff that happens. Yeah, he's like a mutant. Like, there's stuff that you just kind of, you like a certain level of superficiality in your youth. And then it's like, it's crazy. Shootouts and adventures and like.
I was very sophisticated.
Yeah, totally.
As a youth.
Yes.
Two youths.
To what?
What?
Did you say utes?
Yeah, 2 youths.
I can tell you the worst part, what I thought, honestly, the worst part of the film, outside, Kevin Costner is the worst part of the film. Kevin Costner's character is the worst part of the film. I can tell you the other worst part, which might be, most people might not see coming. But the second worst part is the score. The score, I think, is brutally awful because it's like a Disney pirate.
I think I thought that
Score.
too.
It's so mismatched. Even when it gets childlike with Dennis Hopper, who's a cartoon character.
Well, I think I was reading about that though. That there was like multiple scores.
Yeah. It just took me out completely. Every time I heard it, I go, what the? Just stop. Like, this is wrong.
I noticed that too, and then I think it's because there was multiple, I don't know about multiple composers or what have you, but I know that at least, like, the same way that there was too many cooks in the kitchen for everything, like Kevin Costner, I think at least 25 or 50% of the film had been done, and Costner came in and said, I don't like this. I think the words I read on Wikipedia maybe was, it's too ethnic and bland.
Ooh.
So,
Mr. Costner.
And so, like, I think that's probably the case. Like,
So the music was, like, specifically the music or the whole film?
I just think that was specific about the music. Those racist comments. but yeah, I think Costner wanted one thing, the director wanted another, the writer wanted another, this other writer wanted this one, the producers wanted this, the composer wanted, like, everybody was doing something for different films. And then I read also that, like, the early versions of this film, in the earliest drafts, and even kind of on up through a while, it was targeted for children. Like, it was gonna be a kid's movie, but then people wanted to make it more serious, more adult. They brought Joss Whedon in at one point.
Really?
Yeah, young Joss Whedon to, like, do rewrites, and he said it was hell. Much like his sets, from what we've heard lately.
Yeah, well, that's where I learned it from.
Yeah, exactly. So I gotta make
This is how you do it.
Like
This is right here.
Yeah, you guys think this is bad? I was on Waterworld. Yeah, but and then he says also that, like, what his job was basically to not change anything that Kevin Costner had decided and just try to make that better. But you couldn't change anything. So I really think this all comes back to just, like, Costner coming off of Dances with Wolves on top of the fucking world. I'm the biggest star. I'm gonna swing my dick around.
Yeah.
He's staying in a $5,000 a night villa. The rest of the crew's sleeping in bunks in the tent.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that has a lot of that energy of, like, I'm the man and everyone else get the fuck out of the way, and they do. They all quit so Costner could finish it on his own. But yes, the score.
The score is the worst.
It's
Other
not
than his
great.
character, it is the worst part of this film.
Yeah.
It was awful. Awful.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to have a worst part. But that's
There's so many bad parts.
His character is terrible. The score, the massive tonal shifts. I think almost everyone's performance is really poor. I think the overall story doesn't make any sense. All the untied together loose ends. Yeah. The fact that he turns into a superhero, like, it's just crazy. Oh yeah, I mean, I guess we can avoid nitpicking specific story aspects.
That's all I want to do.
Well, because the biggest one is that, like, they go out to the outpost at one point with the little girl, and Jeanne Tripplehorn. Shout out to Jeanne Tripplehorn.
She's the best part of the film.
She's in a bunch of great '90s movies. She was a huge star. In Basic Instinct, and The Firm.
Love that film.
I do love Basic Instinct. I like The Firm a lot. Jeanne Tripplehorn had just, like, a great career, and is a really just a talented, beautiful actress. It was fun to see her in this. Fun to see her get naked in a PG-13 movie in 1995. I remember that was
in the 90s, man.
Yeah.
Do you think it was her or Body Double?
I assume it was her. She got naked as hell in Basic Instinct.
It was her. You heard it here first.
No, I do remember I was so hyper aware of, like, the rating systems when I was younger, especially when,
Okay, what is the line?
No, exactly.
What is the line?
Yeah. But that's why it was like it was all building to Titanic, where you see where she's just topless, and you're like, this isn't allowed in a PG-13 movie. Like, I remember being like,
excuse me, everyone.
Since when was this allowed? But I really do. I remember being fascinated by, like, why is it okay sometimes? Why is it not? And it's all just fucking whatever is at the whim of the MPAA and James Cameron slipping people money and shit. But I remember thinking, like, you could see her butt. Like, in this movie, you never see butts.
A very nice butt.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Lots of side boob. They really push it as far as they can.
Yeah. This movie's for kids, though. So.
Yeah, it's totally a kids movie. The biggest issue is, sorry, Jeanne Tripplehorn. As the three of them are on their way out to an outpost where the Hopper and the smokers or whatever have set a trap, and they're, like, home alone waving, making
Oh
a
yeah,
wave.
what the fuck? I forgot about that. Oh my god.
Monique's like, why are they doing that? And I was like, they're Kevin McAllister. Like, that's what they're doing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Because the Home Alone came out like 92.
Yeah,
So they
90,
said, they're like,
yeah.
this is brilliant. We should do this on the water.
Yeah.
That's what we should do.
It'd be really fun. It's a kids movie.
It's a kids movie.
But then
I forgot about that.
They
Oh my
have this
God.
encounter where they almost die and the ship gets destroyed or whatever, like almost destroyed, and then they get away. Kind of. That's a little vague. Sometimes like, oh, they just stopped. Like there's a lot of stops chasing. In this movie.
It's just like there's a couple times I was like, what? They're
give
just
up?
It's safe now. Music kind of dies down. And it's like
those
the
guys
walls-
have jet skis. Like they could get you. But anyways, so that happens, and they're just all of a sudden they're away,
safe.
and then that's when he takes her underwater, and they just leave the little girl on the boat.
Yeah, stay here.
Like this whole point of everything. This little girl.
It's to protect this girl. But we're gonna go for has to be 30 minutes.
Like they dove, and we were just like, what? The girl, just the girl, and then you come back up, and they got her. It's like, yeah, no shit, you idiots! Like this was that important. This was the time. You just got away. Like you saw the villains half hour ago. They're just up the street.
Yeah, they're just right there. Yeah,
really goofy.
It's
really goofy.
Wait a second, they got her? Well, we took that half-hour break
to go fucking joyride. Why did he have that thing? He can breathe underwater. Why does he have that scuba suit?
to take her.
Because he knew he was going to meet someone special.
He knew he was going to meet someone special.
Yeah.
A human.
Cigarettes would not have filters. Let me just say that in this future world. They're all smoking cigarettes with filters.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Small details. You 175 million. You got somebody on the staff that's like, we probably don't need the filters on the cigarette. They're probably rolling their own cigarettes in the future.
Yeah. They're drinking their own piss, but they got to filter the cigarettes.
Oh, you know what the best part of the movie was? The best part of the movie,
there is
hands
none.
down.
There is none.
No. A truly emotional, powerful part, and I'm not being...
Oh, I don't want to.
When he drops that thing down into the oil, and that old man on the oil boat...
Oh, thank God.
And the flames in his glasses, and he goes, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah, that was...
I might cry now. Like that. Like, where does that moment come from?
I thought that was great. I really thought that. I did enjoy that moment.
I literally, like, no exaggeration, looked at Monique like, and she was like, had turned white. Like, it was like, this is the most like affecting thing. This poor guy.
You took it seriously. I took it as a joke.
Oh no, there's nothing funny about that.
I took it. It's to
That's
me,
like
it's
the
a line from
saddest
Kingpin.
thing I've ever seen.
It's a line from Kingpin. How's life? Taken forever.
No, I know, but not in that instance.
That's how that
poor
energy.
fucking guy.
Because I started laughing. I was like, oh man, that's funny.
Oh, that's so
This is
funny.
like sweet relief. Like, thank God I'm dead.
Well, yeah,
Because
but
I don't have
makes
to
it
deal
so
with this
sad
anymore.
because he's so genuine. Like
Yeah.
that guy that he's got
Yeah.
a couple lines, and then you're just like, what? This guy who was in it for 10 seconds earlier in the movie just pops up.
Just
for
see
that
how
one
miserable
shot.
his life is.
Yeah. That really blew my mind because it's also right in the middle of when the movie has made its turn into full Rambo
just
action
nonsense.
hero.
Yeah. Don't even get me started. I do want to talk about that in a second. But I think that's another good example of people making different movies in the same movie.
Yeah.
Because that actor portrays it with an earnestness, a sincerity. But I fully believe that was meant to be funny. I fully believe that whoever wrote that or the director at the time, whoever was responsible for that moment, that beat in the film, I think was like, oh, they're gonna laugh at this. Like this guy's like happy he's gonna die because of how miserable the.
I wonder. I found it very heartbreaking.
I thought it was fucking.
But that's why I
hilarious.
loved it so much.
But I laughed.
Because
That's
it
what
was
I
like, it hit me, and I was just like, oh, I'm feeling something. Like this film has not made me feel
For 2
anything.
hours, I haven't felt anything.
Except for like revulsion and confusion and disgust and concern. Like, what is happening?
I called my local priest.
I want to know. I'm sorry. I don't want to dwell. As Kevin Costner's editing this film, and he's like, this 3-minute sequence of me swimming with this half-naked child, like, you know what it needs? 2 more minutes. It needs to be 5 minutes long.
2 more minutes.
And slow it down. Make the clip slower. Cut back to Jeanne Tripplehorn another 4, 5, 6 times, looking at us adoringly.
Yeah.
And we'll do some like underwater shots.
Yep.
The sun like glistening down on our bodies.
Yeah.
It got to a point.
Yeah.
And then it got to that point again.
That's slow motion.
It got to the point again.
Just that's where Zack Snyder got where his like slow motion affinity from. That's where Joss Whedon got his set ability from. Like it's just, it's all stems back to Waterworld.
It all comes back to Waterworld.
I think it all comes back to.
All jokes aside, I do think like that's another reason we want to talk about this movie, because I do think it is a seminal moment.
That is true.
In film.
For not better or worse. For worse, it is a seminal moment. You're right.
It's a milestone. It's a landmark.
Marker. Yeah. It's a landmark.
It's like, oh yeah, before Waterworld and after Waterworld, for better and worse, mostly for worse.
Yeah.
But almost through like, I don't know. It's really interesting, just like in a historical context, and it's like Kevin Costner, the star, could have this much impact on like film. Like you never know because of your ego. And I love Kevin Costner, so I'm not like trying to insult him.
I like a lot of his movies.
I like yeah. I mean, JFK is my number 3 favorite film, and he's a ton of fun in a lot of stuff, but. Like that the ego of this one man really like huge
Swings.
offshoots into the future of this whole industry and art form.
Yeah.
Like that's really fascinating.
I mean, he's been a star for so long. I mean, he's on the biggest show.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is his comeback finally.
Ever. Like it's up there. Yellowstone is massive.
It's hugely popular.
And he is obviously an engine to that show.
Yeah, he's the draw. But I mean, the 1-2 punch too. Did you ever see The Postman?
No.
I never saw it either. But that was like,
Let's talk about it.
It can't get any worse than Waterworld for Kevin Costner, and then The Postman comes out, and it got worse. Are you familiar?
No.
Yeah. So The Postman came out in '97, and it was basically.
Is that his next film?
Yes, it's his next film, and he went full back into. I'm directing it. There's no more pretense of someone else is doing this.
Yeah. Like,
and it's a apocalyptic, like future world where he's like the last remaining mailman. I have never seen it.
Oh boy.
But it's like, and I think it's very self-important that like his mission is incredibly important to get the mail across in these trying, horrible Mad Max times. I don't know how like it is actiony, but you know, I don't know much about it. But it was a huge flop and was hugely. It was just like Waterworld almost in all those senses. And that's why he went away for a little while. Like the 2000s, early 2000s, Kevin Costner wasn't making a lot of stuff.
And he banged Cal Ripken's wife.
Did he?
Do you know that story?
No.
I don't know if it's true or
Allegedly.
not.
If you came home and your wife was in bed with Kevin Costner and it's 1999, what are you doing?
I said, Mr. Costner, I have a few scripts for you to read.
That's what I was going to say.
I have a few scripts. I have a few scripts for you to read.
It's like, babe, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Just trying to.
I guess.
Kevin, okay.
Yeah.
I love The Postman. I love Waterworld.
I love Waterworld.